Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 17th virtual panel of PAVE Europe. My name is Guido Di Pasquale. I'm the Managing Director of PAVE Europe. So we, as professionals in the sector, should work hard to ensure that no one is left behind in the mobility revolution that autonomous vehicles can enable. The conversation we are having today is on equity and accessibility, and how can autonomous vehicle help to leave no one behind. I'm delighted today to host this virtual event in collaboration with the EU-funded project SINFONICA. So let me say that SINFONICA is not just a project like any other. It is the passion and the commitment of a group of brilliant minds, and I know them very well, devoted to make sure that mobility is a right for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean any person, irrespective of age, gender, ethnic aspects, educational level, and digital experience, any form of disability and the place where they live. SINFONICA project is also conducting activities of high relevance for PAVE Europe, like the citizen engagement activities, for example, like surveys addressed to all European citizens to collect their needs, concerns, and expectations towards autonomous vehicles. So SINFONICA is very close to the soul of PAVE Europe. Today, we have the pleasure to have representatives from the projects. Giulia Renzi, who is a senior project manager at ICOR and the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. She is the technical coordinator of SINFONICA project, and she is also highly engaged with innovation, creativity, research, equity, inclusiveness, and autonomous vehicles. Hello, Giulia, welcome.
Hello, Guido. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction.
And then we have Andrew Winder. Andrew is a senior manager at Ertico ITS Europe, working on EU projects on intelligent transport systems for clean, eco, and urban mobility. And in SINFONICA is leading the activities on strategies, methodologies, and recommendations for an inclusive, equitable, and accessible future of autonomous vehicles. Hello, Andrew, and welcome.
Hello. Hello, thank you for having me. Hi.
And from the project SINFONICA, we also have Tom Lageven, who is business developer at Arriva, Netherlands, with experience with autonomous public transport pilots in several cities in the Netherlands, and member of the Dutch National CCAM collaboration. And welcome, Tom. And it's very important to have the voice of a public transport operator today.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Guido.
And we have also two exceptional guests with us, not directly involved in the SINFONICA project, but very close to the spirit of the project, to the spirit of PAVE Europe. We have Jerry He, Executive Director at CARTS, Corporation for Automated Road Transportation Safety, a non-profit think tank dedicated to connecting communities with mobility innovations. Hello, Jerry. Welcome.
Nice to meet everyone. It's great to see the progress of SINFONICA and the AV deployments in Europe, and it's a pleasure for me to share a perspective from the US.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Eijiro Ikoko. I'm very happy to have you, Eijiro. Eijiro is a PhD candidate at the University of Leeds in the Institute for Transport Studies. Her research focuses on understanding women's mobility needs and challenges and exploring mobility as a service as a solution for sub-Saharan Africa. So she recently won the prize in the Young Researcher competition under cross-modality for passenger transport category at the recent Transport Research Arena 2024 in Dublin just 1 month ago. So welcome everyone. Today is the format that we are having is a bit different. We will have, and I'm going to show the agenda that we have today. So we are structuring this virtual panel and this webinar in 2 parts. The first part, we will have presentations from the SINFONICA project with an overview of the project by Julia. And then Andrew will introduce the existing and planned CCAM public transport trials and services in Europe. So it's also good to have an overview of what is happening in Europe at the moment. And then Tom will give a presentation on marrying the needs of users with operational constraints and the requirements. So this is also very important for the discussion that we will have in our panel, where the SINFONICA partners will stay with us, of course, Julia, Andrew, and Tom, and our guest, Jerry and Giro will join the discussion and enrich and contribute with their expertise on this very important topic. But I talked a lot, so now it's time to start with the introduction to the SINFONICA project and also, Julia, why this project is so close to what we do at PAVE Europe in terms of user understanding and acceptance, and how we can make sure that people are participating to this mobility revolution. So I stop sharing the screen and you can share your slides by yourself.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here. Once again, thank you, Guido, for the super kind introduction. What is SINFONICA? So SINFONICA, first of all, stands for Social Innovation to Foster Inclusive, Cooperative, Connected and Automated Mobility. Many keywords to say that our main goal is to talk with people, talk with citizens, talk with stakeholders, talk with future users of CCAM in order to understand their needs, their desires, their concerns related to CCAM. So first of all, we need to let them understand what we are talking about, because the CCAM concept, which for us is something that we think and we talk about every day, is something that for many people is still very far from their reality, very far also from their fantasy, from their imagination. So the first thing that SINFONICA aims to do is to explain clearly what is CCAM, what are the autonomous vehicles, what's happening within innovation in mobility transport. And to do so, we are developing within SINFONICA new methodologies, new strategies to engage people, because we all agree that co-creation, so participatory approaches, go to talk with people, is the key to actually have an innovation that can work in the reality, that cannot be just an utopia, that can be something real. So we are developing these strategies, these methodologies, we are talking with people, and our final aim is to create to help all the policymakers, all the stakeholders, all the vehicles producer to find information that are needed in order to implement a pilot site that is inclusive, accessible, and equal, that can be gender friendly. And we're not just talking about men and women, we are talking about all the genders, and we have a special attention to LGBTQAI+ community. And we want to get this done, as Guido was saying, assuring that no one is left behind. For us, this is very important. So we are talking with people with disabilities, cognitive and physical. We are talking with people with mobility challenges. We are talking with elderly. We are talking with people that are not feeling very confident in dealing with technologies, and so on and so on. Getting back to SINFONICA, it's an Horizon Europe project. It started in 2022 and it will run until next year in August. We are 13 partners from 7 different countries, plus 1 associated partners in UK. And what we aim to do, and we are actually reaching because we are not far from the conclusion of the participatory approaches, is to reach 300 interviews around Europe, around 40 focus group around Europe, and more than 12 workshops in 4 European realities. So in particular in Trikala in Greece, in West Midland in UK, in Hamburg in Germany, and in North Brabant in the Netherlands. Why it is important for us to have a solid connection with these realities? Because we, as I said, we want to talk with people. So for the moment, we are involving elderly, people with different disabilities, as I said, women and LGBTQAI+ community, young people, digital vulnerable people, people living in rural areas, students, low-income people, cyclists, migrants, and single parents with families. With all these categories that we consider people with mobility challenges for different reasons, as you can imagine, we are doing the interviews. So we are one-to-one, face-to-face, in order to really establish a connection, which is not just to collect information, which is absolutely needed, but is also to let them understand more about the CCAM and let them understand that when in Europe a new innovation is proposed, is made by real people. We are real people. We are proposing something new. We really want to know what they feel in order to and deploy something that is useful for them. And then to tell you something more, we are doing many focus group, talking with people with different ages, from 20 years old to 70 years old people. We talk with people with different low income level, and we talk with people that have an easy access to public transport, and people that live far from public transport, or that their area is not very well served, they don't have bus during the night time, and so on and so on. Because the CCAM will have to be something useful for both those that are used to use public transport and for people that are not using public transport at all. Last but not least, and then I shut up because many things, many interesting things will be discussed today, and I don't want to take all the time. We will do workshop inviting people throughout Europe. So all the listeners that we have today, please, if you are interested to join, don't hesitate to get back to us. And this is, I think, also the most related aspect with PAVE, being said that, as Guido said, the soul of not leaving anyone behind and talking with people is the same between PAVE and SINFONICA. We are organizing workshop in order to talk with European realities, in order to discuss guidance for inclusivity, in order to understand how a small pilot can be deployed in a bigger solution, in order to understand how we can draft policy recommendations that can actually be useful for the policymakers. We want to understand how to what we are doing, not just from a technical point of view, which is being discussed in many other projects, but also from a societal point of view, how we can make sure that we didn't leave anyone behind. All these things are the core of the SINFONICA project, together with many other activities that, of course, are enriching everything.
Thank you very much, Julia, for this comprehensive overview of the SINFONICA project. That gives us an idea of what the project is doing. And now I would leave the floor to Andrew to give an overview of what is existing today and to set the scene, and what are the similarities and the differences and the patterns in the different trials in public transport and autonomous vehicles today in Europe. Andrew, you can share the slides. Exactly. The floor is yours.
Okay, I hope you see everything okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So hello again. I'm not going to bore you with loads of slides. I've only have 3, so this is very short. One of the tasks we're doing in SINFONICA, building on what Julia just said about all the interviews and the focus groups and the engagement with different types of users and non-users, there's also what we might call the reality check on the operator side. And this is where operators like Arriva come in, because obviously to run any kind of public transport or shared service, you need either public subsidy or a business case or both. Life is a compromise. You cannot always make 100% of the people happy 100% of the time. So we started this task called, it was basically on the limits and possibilities of public transport. And we started on this by looking at what exists, including all the different trials that have happened around, really focusing on Europe, although we're not necessarily excluding other continents, but really as a European project, we're looking at EU trials or Europe-wide trials at the moment, not just European projects, but other ones as well. So this is work in progress. This is a little snapshot of where we are. We have looked at, or we are currently looking at 63 different kinds of services. This is not projects, they are individual services, so there might be 5 trials or something in one project. And the scope is ones that are operating now that any person can use, so an open public transport system for passengers, for citizens. One that has operated recently in the last few years as a trial but isn't operating anymore, or one that is really almost about to start over this year, so at least it's very well planned and the planning is mature and they know exactly what kind of service it will be, where and how often and everything. Not so much things that will start next year or after. So we have we're looking at 48 past services, only 8 so far that are operating now, but we may have gaps. I'm aware that there may be some things that maybe some of our audience know about and that we haven't detected yet. And then ones that are about to start in the next few months, there are 7 more. These come from 22 different projects or groups of services, some of them commercial, some of them national or regional projects. There are 8 major EU projects there, some of them ongoing and some of them finished. Some of them started more recently as well. And quite interestingly, they covered most European countries. So there's a bit of a gap in the east of Europe and a few others where we didn't find anything yet. But most 18 European countries are covered in these trials. So it's quite geographically diverse. And also, if you look at the route distance, what kind of service does a autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicle, what kind of service can it provide? And they're going from 0.5 kilometer, 500 meters, to 22.5 kilometers, which is a interurban route, really. Although 80% of them are quite short distance between, like the 80th percentile is between 1.2 and 8 kilometers long. So these are maybe what people are considering or projects and operators are considering the main use cases for this kind of vehicle, not so much the longer distance intercity yet. So this is ongoing analysis of it, as I said. Most of the use cases are urban, a few are rural in specific areas, and some are in specific sites like tourist sites, business parks, and etc. And some are on a mix of roads that are, some of them are on segregated roads or busways for part of the time, but most are interacting with ordinary traffic, at least most, if not all of the time. What I found interesting so far is that looking at the ones that are fixed route and timetable and the ones that are DRT, which is demand responsive transport, they're approximately 50-50 from what I can see so far. So about half are bookable and half are running like an ordinary standard bus service on a route serving normal bus stops. So that's interesting to see the use cases. What we're delving into a little bit more for the demand responsive, what happens, how do people book? Because I believe that booking for a lot of, especially more vulnerable people, it can be a barrier if you need to use an app or a computer, or even if you need to phone someone, or you need to book it at least 2 hours or a day before you want to travel. You might not have the flexibility to decide 10 minutes before your journey that you're going to go somewhere on a bus. It's not like a fixed route where you can just turn up and go or change your plan. What happens if you change your plan, if you don't show up? These kinds of things are issues with ordinary demand responsive transport, let alone automated DRT. Then the road types, only one of them I'm aware of so far that where AV has used a motorway, and this is the CAV4 project in Scotland running between Edinburgh and Ferrytoll on the peninsula of Fife, just north of Edinburgh, and that uses a motorway and an expressway using full-size buses. But most of the others are smaller vehicles. And then the ticketing is a thing as well. Most of the trials I've noticed are free because they're part of European projects and trials. But I can imagine, and I'm sure our friends from Arriva will confirm this, that if and when CCAM becomes wider and becomes part of the normal public transport network, then the normal kinds of public transport tickets and passes and payment would be required. And then there would be the issue of how to make that available and accessible, and how to enforce it, especially if there is no staff. And then staffing analysis, we have many with a safety driver that takes over under certain circumstances, others with onboard staff, but maybe not a driver. A couple have both because they're a trial. And of course, one of the selling points of CCAM is maybe you save staff costs. If you've still got to have staff, then the operational advantage might be less. But on the other hand, if you replace a driver with an onboard assistant, then that might make the service more accessible for people, because the assistant can help passengers who need it during the journey, instead of having to concentrate on driving. Most of the trials that we've detected so far are these mini shuttles, things like Navia and EasyMile, many other brands as well, the kinds of things that seat between 6 and 12 people, sometimes with standing and sometimes not. A couple have a full-size bus as well. And the SAE levels, the automation levels, mostly aiming at level 4, but in some cases level 3, where the driver does need to take over it on some occasions. And then they are running, some are running about 2/3 of the route automated, and the rest driver controlled, and others which are fully driverless and 100% automated. And then you have these different vehicle considerations. Things like the speed of the vehicle is an issue for people, certain vulnerabilities. Are you going to allow standing maybe at a very low speed in a city centre? That is okay. On a highway, it's probably not okay, and you would need maybe some kind of, you would need to have everybody seated, and you may need to enforce that, or in some cases things like seat belts are required. And then accessibility and so on is an issue too. So these are all if you add all these different permutations, you could have a potentially very large number of different kinds of services. So we're trying to focus what are the most useful and most sellable ones, and the most likely to fulfill different needs. If an operator is going to use, or a public authority is going to set up a CCAM, so public transport service, where and why, where would be the first route to do it? And we're asking in a survey, an ongoing questionnaire, this question, not just what is existing, which we can probably find out online mostly, but why? Why did you choose that kind of vehicle? Why is it running on that route instead of another route? Why did you choose this staffing configuration? And what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to just demonstrate the technology, or fulfill a social need, or something else? So this is what we're trying to get to the bottom of, because I don't believe this has been done before. This will all come out into a report this summer that will be public. So stay tuned to our website when that is ready. And then, as Julia mentioned earlier, we have further workshops and events coming online fairly soon. Workshop in autumn in Birmingham. We will be at the Dubai ITS Congress for those who are interested in going there, with many other activities. And of course, we're on the social media. So I will stop now. I think this has really given a lot of food for thought and questions, but especially many of our project coordinators on the top list, I think here, have reached out to projects and operators of CCAM public transport. In case one of you is running or a project or a CCAM service and you didn't hear from us, please let me know, because we really like to have a chat with you to see what you are demonstrating or serving. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm sure that what you presented will give food for thoughts to the other panelists and for the discussion later. Now I would invite Tom to share your screen and your slides, and it's very important what you will talk about, because marrying the needs of the users with all the operational constraints that you have at public transport level, I think it's a very important aspect that needs to be considered. It's not so trivial to deploy autonomous vehicles without considering these constraints. Thank you, Tom. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Guido. I'll keep my screen like this because the presenting mode is not sharing for some reason. But I would like to tell you something a little bit more about CCAM from an operator perspective. And of course, I work for Arriva in this case. This is really a general view of a lot of operators which are active in the Netherlands, at least. When we are designing any new service, and in this case it's CCAM, of course, but it's also for service like demand responsive or bus rapid transit or the zero emission transition. There are always three main pillars we focus on as an operator. First and most important is always that it's a safe service. If you achieve a safe service, you can look at if the service is reliable, and lastly, the level of comfort of the service. And comfort is not just about how comfortable is the seat in this case, but it looks at the whole passenger experience, from planning, booking, paying, traveling, etc. I will now just take a really short deep dive on all those 3 points, specifically looking at CCAM in this case. Developing a safe CCAM system is the most important topic for operators. It has been for the last 5, I think, till 7 years. We've done a lot of pilots in the country with CCAM shuttles in different scenarios, in rural areas and cities, just to gain some experience in how do the vehicles behave, how safe are they. And basically what we learned is that the vehicles and the sensors are really reliable in scanning the roads and having a safe driving behavior. But it's still necessary to have a safety driver on board to intervene when anything goes wrong. And the vehicles were struggling quite a lot when the traffic gets mixed a lot. So when you have a lot of cyclists or people crossing the street. So in that case, there still needs some development. There's still some development needed for the vehicles, the radars, etc. And we are in close contact with the vehicle suppliers and software suppliers, and they expect that they're ready for fully autonomous operation in mixed traffic by 2030. In the meantime, we also have to have some legislative development, because at the moment, at least in the Netherlands, we are only allowed to do CCAM operations in the form of a pilot. You have to have a safety driver on board, and the maximum speed is 25 kilometers an hour. So in this case, CCAM is not even competing with the e-bike. And of course, you want to achieve higher speeds and not have to have a safety driver to operate. And lastly, for safety, we have a little bit of experience with pilots, but not with a large-scale CCAM operation. So we don't have a training schedule yet. Nobody has it yet for safety drivers or traffic controllers. And that's something we'll have to develop together with universities. Well, as soon as we reach a safe level of CCAM operation, the next step is the reliable service. And of course, we're also working on this. For the reliability, the first thing that's most important is how do you develop a CCAM network? If you have fixed bus lines, it's pretty easy to calculate how many buses do you need, how many seats, what's the frequency. But CCAM often goes hand in hand with demand responsive, and this gives all kind of new opportunities for network design. So really trying to figure out how do you design a network which makes it available for everybody. Another thing is traffic control. Usually in public transport, traffic control just depends fully on the drivers. They call the driver if anything's wrong, and the driver will fix it. But when you have no drivers, how do you make sure you can hold a reliable service if there are any disturbances? And lastly is the needs, the service needs of our customers. Right now, the drivers are the most important service channels for questions or helping people to get in and out of the vehicle. But if there's no driver present anymore, how do you maintain the same level of service, or ideally improve, of course? And the third level is the comfortable level, and that's also something we're already working on. I also included the SINFONICA logo in this case, because we're also researching the needs and requirements of the users of our CCAM system. Of course, we know what the needs and requirements are for our current fixed bus services, but what impact does the CCAM implementation have? And do we still align with those needs and requirements? And as soon as we know these, we have to design our services to make them available for everyone. Because as you know, public transport is available to the public, and it's really important for us so to don't exclude any part of society. And lastly, in this case, what's a big research topic is travel information and booking system in case you go for a demand responsive system. Of course, we have some experience it on small scale, but if CCAM gets bigger and bigger, also in just regular bus service, how do you inform your travelers and make sure they can book the service quite easily? For us as an operator, at the moment, there are 3 CCAM implementations which are really promising for the future. First one is not really CCAM, I think, but it's the one most close by. That's autonomous bus depot. So the location where the bus is parked and fueled and cleaned, etc. We have a big shortage of drivers. It's a problem all throughout Europe, and it's only getting bigger in the next years. So we want to use the drivers for transporting people, not for transporting an empty bus. So we're trying to autonomize all these empty kilometers. So we need less drivers to do our day-to-day operations. The second is autonomous transport on segregated infrastructure. So we could look at bus lanes in existing roads or just completely different roads. It's because you don't have a lot of mixed traffic. This is a quite easy implementation if the legislation is also ready, of course. And third, and I think that's what most people think about when you talk about CCAM, is the first and last mile solution, usually with small shuttles, 8 to 12 seats, in rural areas where it's not affordable to operate a fixed line bus service. But of course, if you're a CCAM where you don't have to have a driver anymore, it could be affordable to implement it. These 3 topics are the most promising looking right now, and we think around 2028, 2030, we can start large-scale implementations of these 3 services. But lastly, to do a successful implementation, a cooperation for us is really the main priority. Cooperation makes sure that all knowledge is done in this research is shared by everybody, and that everybody is able to implement a CCAM service which is accessible for really everyone. And within the Netherlands, we have quite a big development agenda where all public transport operators and authorities are involved, also national government and legislative bodies. And we are also trying to get involved now more OEM suppliers, so the vehicle suppliers, the developers of mobility as a service apps, and software developers of the vehicles. And on a European level, we are working with SINFONICA, which Julie also already told everything about. This week, we also kicked off a second European project, Culture Road, which is more focusing on the cultural and geographical differences between CCAM user groups. And on the rail side, we have the ERDU, the European Rail Joint Undertaking, which is researching the techniques and the passengers for autonomous rail transport. And of course, it all connects together on a big level here with webinars like these with PAVE. We're also connected to the Connecting Europe network and the CCAM partnership. And together with all these partners, we can make sure that by 2030 and beyond, we will have some successful CCAM implementations all throughout Europe. That's it for me.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for this overview and the perspective from Arriva. And I think now we can move on to the panel discussion, and I would like to invite you all to switch on your camera and join me for this second part of our virtual panel. Yeah, we have Giulia, Giro, Jerry, Andrew, and Tom. And thank you very much for your presentation, Giulia, Andrew, Tom, introducing what you are doing in SINFONICA. And I would like to, you just mentioned, Tom, about the development of autonomous vehicles and the journey from a few years ago, and how this technology is developing and deploying in pilots, in trials, in demonstration. So I would like to ask you all who wants to start, where are we with the technology? So what is the, are we progressing compared to 5, 6, 7 years ago? Is, in your opinion, there are quick development in the field? And also, what would you expect in the coming years in terms of technical development? Who wants to start?
I can start if you don't mind. Yeah,
yes,
because I'm in the US, and I think a lot of deployments has been happening in the US. So my understanding of this is two ends. One, on the technology side, on the proof of technology side, it's progressing really, really well. Companies like Waymo or Cruise are offering truly driverless rides in many cities, from San Francisco to Phoenix to Austin, and among others. We have a lot of public transit automation projects happening as well. You know, Jacksonville, Florida, for example, their U2C project is progressing really well. Our own project, Trenton Moves, based in New Jersey, it's also moving steadily as well. What's showing in my background. So I think in terms of the technology, and we're progressing very, very well. And in the past 2 years, we're seeing a wave of AI innovations, the inclusion of large language models in the use of self-driving cars as well. That I remain very, very optimistic. And I think the talented engineers in Silicon Valley and UK and Europe and around the world are gonna help us solve autonomy. At the same time, I think the proof of market is not as clear as the proof of technology in the US context, and I'm sure in the US context. I think since 2010, roughly $300 billion have been poured and invested into ACES mobility, automated, connected, electric, and shared mobility. But I think we have yet to see a significant proof of market or return of investment yet. We at CARS think it's because these new forms of supply of mobility is not necessarily deployed at places where the demand for such mobility is. So there is a mismatch of supply and demand. And for us, I think equity and inclusion is actually where the market for autonomous mobility is. For example, right now, a lot of services are deployed in Phoenix and Chandler for now, which I have tried in person. But if you consider the context of Phoenix, many households already have 1 or 2 cars waiting in the garage. So it would be very, very hard for autonomous mobility to provide additional mobility to folks who need them, right? But in many, many parts of the US, I think there lies a significant population who either don't have access to private cars or don't have access to reliable transit. We think that's where affordable mobility powered by autonomy is going to be the most disruptive. we think that's where one of the earliest proof of market will take place.
Thanks a lot, Jerry. I think in Europe is quite similar, the situation in terms of cars parked in front of our house. Anyone else? In particular, what do you think are the biggest challenges at the moment for autonomous vehicles? Who wants to add on that? Because we see this trends of positive developments also compared to a few years ago. A lot of new companies are deploying new technology and based on AI also. So what are, on the other side, the biggest challenges that you see at the moment in terms of technology and also the interesting trends for the coming years, 2, 3, 4 years from now?
Maybe I could say something. I think the technology is already quite mature. The main issue with the technology is what happens when something goes wrong, a road blockage and this kind of thing. But also, I think a lot of it is assuming that everyone behaves in a normal and rational and legal and courteous way and obeys all the rules. And of course, sometimes, you know, if you've taken a bus late at night, sometimes that is not always the case. So there is a need for people. Sometimes autonomy doesn't always deal with people who are maybe trying to disrupt the system, but also then making people feel comfortable. I remember quite some time ago, I had a friend who worked for Arriva in the UK, and they were doing a big public survey on bus users in the Midlands of England, and they said most of the respondents, and there were like a very large proportion of elderly people, they said the most important thing for them on a bus is the driver, because the driver's the nice person who says hello, how are you, helps them if they need, tells them where to get off if they're not sure, and this is important for many groups of people. And remember that public transport users are disproportionately more young people and old people than the general population, and more women than the general population. And not all of them are fully familiar of where they are going every day. They're not, some are daily commuters who know everything, but some are one-off users, and you have to cater for these groups as well. So that's, I think that's the key thing, is to try to how to take into account people, and the technology doesn't do everything. Even if we all have smartphones and we say, okay, the generation who never use smartphones, they will have passed away in some years from now, and then everyone will have a smartphone. Not the case, because unfortunately people, when they get older, sometimes you have Alzheimer's, dementia and so on. I know people who are perfectly capable of using buses and trains, but they have no idea with technology. They cannot use a smartphone. They don't know about the internet. They just want to get on, talk to a person, pay with cash. And I think that will always be the case, that there will be people who, you need to make public transport open for those people. So I think that's the main challenge, and this is one thing we're doing in SINFONICA. And just to say very quickly, we did look at, in a previous task that our project partners ISINOVA led, that was looking at what indicators were used in different European CCAM projects. And of course, nearly all of them took into account older people, disabled people, and so on. But very few took into account people living in rural or remote areas, people at risk of poverty, people who are digitally vulnerable and can't use a smartphone or a computer. These were much less addressed by projects. Very few have done that so far. So there is a hole to fill.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you, Andrew. So the humans always behind the technology are very important. And now if we talk more about inclusivity, which is the topic of this conversation, and inclusivity in public transport, actually public transport is becoming more and more inclusive. There are new services, new type of services also on demand, and services that are trying to complement the traditional mass transit However, there's still a lot to do and to gain, and the expectation is that autonomous vehicles will help in this direction. But what are now, in your opinion, the biggest improvement in public transport that you have seen and that you would like to see? What needs to be improved to make sure that it is inclusive for all? Who wants to react on that? Ejiro, maybe is it your field of research?
I just wanted to actually add to what Andrew was saying, then I'll just continue. Just like I said, we have different users, and just have to have different set of disability type of people, because my expertise are more on gender. Also, women are not the same, so women are not homogeneous. So I think it's hard time this to understand that women are heterogeneous, because we're not just the same, we're not. So this should be reflected in the public transport, also in the use of technology, and also the issue of literacy level. So I think he mentioned, yes, some people maybe are old, or some people don't like to use technology. Some people want to use, but they have different level of understanding. Now that needs to be taken into account, because somebody will not want to use a technology that makes them feel more inferior than they already feel, or feel more less educated. So I think this things should be considered. And also medium of communication. Not everybody likes to read. So everybody have different ways of getting information. So I think these are things that should be put into place. Just to quickly add again, I remember speaking to someone, she's not on a wheelchair, but she's physically disabled. And she said she wanted to use the public transport actually in the UK, and she felt bad because it's catered for a wheelchair, but not for her. She doesn't need a wheelchair, but she's physically disabled. So it's people are not the same. Yes, they might be in the same group, but in that group there are subgroups, and that needs to be catered for. Yeah.
No, that's very important what you say. People are not the same, and the same people is not the same during the day. Can change also the needs during the day for the same person. So that's it's a challenge, but we need to take this into account. And how to combine autonomous vehicles and the inclusiveness. So this is what you are doing in SINFONICA, and it's also your topic of research. So how to combine inclusiveness and equity with autonomous vehicles, because this is a technology that is coming, and we would like to avoid mistakes done in the past, probably with previous transport systems. So how to make it right this time?
Well, maybe I can start. I think some other people have something more to say compared to me, but I think the point is what Ejiro said at the very end. She said it's not just about categories, but subcategories as well. And I think that is a key point, because in the European project, we are talking a lot about categories. Within SINFONICA, a good part of our project at the beginning studied all the categories of people in order to be sure that no one is left behind. But that is not enough. As Ejiro said, we need subcategories. And then the other answer to your question, Guido, in my opinion, and in SINFONICA view at least, is to talk with people. Because to be sure that everyone is included and every shades of people that change needs also during lifetime. I don't have the same needs, because I can have challenges in mobility also just for a short period of my life, but still. To understand those shades, I need to talk with people. That's the only road.
I concur with Julia. If I may add on top of Julia, I think at least from our own project, I think direct community engagement is very, very important. We can design a product for community members. It has to be designed together with them. We can come up with a solution and then, hey, this is your autonomous ride. But the community members who need services must be involved in the planning phase to make sure that their concerns are addressed. I would also like to add, we see autonomy as can bring is an equalizer, because our work very much focuses on the economically disadvantaged, or if you may say economically disabled to some extent. You know, a lot of folks who don't have access to vehicles in the US. We think, and we're working with autonomy because of its affordability promises, because autonomy is going to bring scalability, and scalability will bring affordability. And I think it's really through affordability that we can achieve equity. Otherwise, there will always be a cost and price gap there. The reason why we are working with autonomy is because it really has the potential to bring the cost of providing mobility significantly lower than what the current status quo is. And I think that there will be a significant equalizer in our society.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Any other reaction on that?
So I just want to add this. This is still on the inclusion, the autonomous vehicle. And I think I saw a question on safety. The thing is, on one important thing, it's good that we want to work with the communities, but it's important that we should change the way we ask the question, because if you ask the question wrongly, you get wrong response. So I think that is what we need to really consider. So let me just give a quick example. I just finished my data collection and I spoke to someone and asked her, do you feel harassed or do you feel unsafe on the bus? You're like, oh no, I don't feel unsafe. And I gave a scenario. She's like, oh my God, I feel unsafe. So we need to know how we ask this question so we don't get false data that will not affect whatever we produce. And I'm just speaking on safety to still on gender, but on women. Like you said, we can see the same kind of vehicle in the daytime and we can just board the vehicle or we are okay with it. But that same vehicle at nighttime, a lot of thinking is ongoing on our mind. Am I safe? What's in the vehicle? What does it go to? So I think as much as we want to go driverless or without a physical driver, it might be an issue for some persons, mostly from the gender side. Not maybe for working class ladies, that might be fine, but for other kind of women, and don't forget how they call intersectionality, when different social identities create a new identity. Now, that is one thing that we also need to consider, because when someone has had an experience coming from a very rough area and certain things, it also affects how they make their decisions. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Maybe I don't know if the question is for Tom. In the project, you are working with journey flows, so the journey of a passenger. And when we talk about accessibility and inclusivity, we need to consider the different steps that any type of passenger needs to take to access the mobility. And in this case, with autonomous vehicles. So what are the features that we need to include to help different groups, vulnerable groups, but anyone, according to their journey, to be booking via an application? But you said that maybe not everyone is comfortable with digital tools, stopping the vehicle to get into it. So there are different phases that needs to be taken into account when you talk about accessibility. What's your view on that?
That is extremely important, and of course it's just equally as important in regular bus services, where you have all kinds of facilities for people with impaired with little vision or trouble hearing, wheelchair users, and what we also done in the last few years is, of course, make these journey flows. And a journey flow really starts at the moment when somebody's, for example, at home, thinks about, I want to go travel, and all the steps that will follow. So how do you plan your trip? How do you find your information? How do you book? How do you get to the stop? And what are your emotional levels throughout this ride? And we've done a lot of journey flows, really just not in theory, but also with people who have some kind of troubles with traveling, and just go along with them. Let them make the ride, let them book the ride, and see what they come across. And I think what has been lacking in the pilots what has been done in the last few years, so the focus was primarily on the technique of the vehicle and the sensors, etc. But we're getting the phase and then new pilots who need just to do these journey flows with different groups, with different types of mobility issues, to gain this experience and how CCAM differs from our regular bus service. So I don't have a list of facilities right now yet, and I think that is what's lacking and what should be a big priority for anyone who initiates a pilot in the next 3 years.
Thank you, Tom. I have final questions from my side for all of you. One is about the biggest barrier that you see for public transport rollout using autonomous vehicles. Is it technology? Is it safety? Is it public acceptance? Business? What's your view on that? So where we should work on more now?
An easy one, Guido, to finish this session. Easy question. So I don't have an answer. I don't know which is the main barrier. For what we can see in Sinfonica is not really the acceptance, because while we are talking with people, of course, we found some people that are scared, some people that are against new technologies as a philosophy of life. But in general, I must say that we are talking with people that are eager to know more about autonomous vehicle, that are curious about the new possibilities that they can have, that they are, some people said that they can't wait to be more free. There is this big link that we find between autonomous vehicle and the freedom idea that it can give to the different people. So I don't know which is the answer, but from what we can see is not the acceptance.
Okay. But that's interesting to know, and what you are doing in Sinfonica to also this type of findings, because at PAVE Europe we are not forcing for user acceptance. What we want that happens is user understanding. So understanding of the technology, and but then trusting this technology, but then they will accept it if they understand and trust it. And
what I could throw in is maybe we are now perhaps with autonomous road vehicles where we were with autonomous rail maybe 40 years ago or 45 years ago. So of course many cities have automated metros. That's quite a mature technology. There are the issues, for example, that Ijiro said, that the personal security issues still exist on an automated rail system, but people don't have so much the worry of safety or will it actually turn up because it's running on a fixed infrastructure. But so there is quite a lot of acceptance there. And also the business case for automated rail is usually they're very high frequency metros. So therefore you do save money by not having the drivers. Now, in shuttle and bus services, we're going for more low density services, like the kind of vehicle you can see in the picture behind Tom and behind Jerry as well. These are low density things, and it's a different kind of business case. So yeah, I would say the trust and acceptance, not so much from safety, but for what happens when things go wrong, but also personal security, but also from the operator point of view, what is the business case? If these things are expensive and you've got to have an assistant to help people on anyway, then you're not really saving money. But it could be a system where you can maybe summon an assistant if you need one, and if you don't need one, then it could be fully driverless. So there's lots of different things, and I was very interested in what Tom said about maybe empty movements to depots and things where you really don't need a person, and that would save staff and you can deploy the stuff where they're really needed.
Thank you, Andrew. A final question to each of you, quick answer if you can. Is there anything you wish everyone would take in mind within this sector to make it inclusive for all? Maybe Jiro, you want to start?
It's just what I keep saying. We have different user groups, we have different needs. and people activities or gender roles or their lifestyle determines what mobility they would need. So once we start realizing that people are not the same, I think we are heading to a good direction. Yeah.
Thank you. Jerry?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in the beginning, I think the supply and demand needs to come together. The supplier and demand for mobility needs to have a conversation. The supplier should really see where the demand really is, and the demand should probably be open more to different forms of supply. That's how we can merge these two together.
Thank you. And Andrew?
Not a lot more to say. I think it's just I think a lot of the CCAM projects up to now are really have been trials and technology related, and sometimes it strikes me as a solution looking for a problem to solve, and it should be the other way around. It should be, what is the problem, how can we solve it, and then what we're looking at now in these different well, overview of European and international practice. What are the quick wins? What are the biggest problems that you can solve with CCAM and make services better for people? It's not going to be everywhere in 10 years. So where do you focus? Yeah, it can be certain types of services are more successful than others. Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, I think it has to be completely really understood. Development so far has really been technology based. So in the next step, we need to just get in touch with the users more, and not just desk research, just get out there, speak to them, let them experience it. I think that is pretty important for big scale implementation the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Thank you. And the final words from Julia.
Thank you, Guido, and thanks to all the panelists for the great ideas that you shared. I have 2 things in mind. One is to don't get tired of talking with people, because for me is the really key things to do. And the other one is don't be afraid of saying that you did something wrong. Because in my opinion, within European projects especially, but I guess in the research world in general, what we are missing is the worst practice description. And that is okay, because we are all trying to do innovation with the research. We are all doing mistakes. Let's share what we are doing wrong, also in the inclusivity way, so that we can learn and improve and improve and improve.
Yeah, that's well said. So thank you very much to everyone. Unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Ijiro, Julia, Andrew, and Tom for joining this very interesting conversation today. As I said, this is a key aspect when we deploy autonomous vehicles, and I hope that everyone will be on board in this discussion, and that we'll talk about this more and more about equity and inclusiveness. The video will be available on our YouTube channel and also the podcast. So for those who could not attend, they will have the opportunity to listen to you. And again, thank you all for joining us today, and see you next time.